The following video was recorded live at the conference and produced by the Sound of Knowledge Incorporated. Welcome to the Black Hat Briefings 1999. This meeting was held in exciting Las Vegas, Nevada from July 7th through the 8th. This is videotape number 13, Track C, Total BS Security, Business-Based System Security.
My speaker this afternoon is Jim Litchko. He's going to talk about BS security. Well, total BS security, 100%. I've known Jim for about 15 years. I knew him when he was a commander in the Navy. I knew him when he became a civilian. I knew him at TIS. I knew him at Secure Computing. If you look at the bag, that's Secure Computing. He's been around. He does know his business. I found many of the things that he does, as much as I hate to admit it, I am following him. I teach in college. He taught in college. A year and a half, I retire. Maybe I'll be on the path of a lot of companies. Jim is very good. He understands what is needed to present a good security program. He understands the implications. Listen to what he has to say, ask questions, learn, benefit. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. When I worked at NSA, I wasn't one of those, let's see, where's Ira? No, I'm one of the good guys. I actually sold their budget to Congress and Pentagon because I wore a white uniform, looked honest, and it worked out well. The nice part was I got to see everything in the Information System Security Group. And I got to see how it was to be done and how it was not to be done. I got to see the NSA solution, and then I saw the practical solution. There's a lot. Yeah, I was also in the field. I was in Stuttgart, Germany when we went into Beirut, and we also did the first Persian Gulf attacks. So I got to see how people really did it, people that didn't have everything in the world. And they had to base everything on the mission. When I got out in 1990, I started working for a trusted information system, then I moved on to secure computing. What I learned in those things was that as small businesses, they don't have a lot of money, even the ones that are security firms, so they had to do it smart. And that's what this presentation's about. Over the last 10 years, I've actually done quite a bit in the area of information security and putting applications in. And while I'm talking through this, I will give you an approach that I've used both in the military, but it works perfectly well in the commercial sector, as well as it does in the government. So I'll give you an approach, and basically it starts out with what is the business? Attitudes. I'm going to talk about the attitudes of individuals that I've met out there, and you have to work with those attitudes when you're trying to provide them a solution. Solutions, I've got a couple of case studies. Actually, I've got quite a few case studies in here, and I'll talk about the different areas where you can do it smart and not hard. One of the things I'm going to mention up front, technical is not the only solution out there. There's a lot of other solutions that are more practical. Opinions, I've been in this area for over 30 years. I was a SIG-enter, that meant I attacked systems, and I've been a protector of systems. And I've got a lot of opinions. Also, I teach at Johns Hopkins, and I've done that since '88, the graduate course in Network and System Security. So I'm used to questions while I'm talking. We'll watch the time a bit. I will roll fast. This is an afternoon presentation, and it usually helps if I move on a little fast. So here we go. The approach towards an evolving network, and I've seen this from Exxon, Merck, small businesses, the military systems. It always started with one computer, and then they started adding more to it. The architecture pretty much stayed pretty unstable, and people usually never saw a picture of what their architectures look like. They just knew they had a requirement to get done. They added the networks and they added the systems. The next thing that happened in about 1992 or so, they entered the internet. And why did they enter the internet? Because they had clients out there or people they had business partners with. Or they found out that they had other activities out there, like branch offices, they had to interface with. And the internet turned out to be one of the best tools. They got rid of their lease lines and they went to the internet. Lease lines, more secure. Internet, least secure. But it was, from a business perspective, a less expensive opportunity. One of the things when I worked at the National Computer Security Center, I worked with Bob Morse Sr. Bob Morse Sr. wasn't much for words, but he did have a lot of good insights. When I asked him, what is a manager's job? When it comes to computer security, he said it's the secure brick theory is what you have to understand. What he meant by that was this. You can set up a system so it's operationally the best system for supporting the needs of the users out there. Absolutely. And it may be like putting your computer on your front lawn and letting anybody touch it, and not very secure. Then if you're going to build security into the system, you're going to make it secure. Now you could take that to the extreme from free information or openness to so tied down that the reason it's called a secure brick theory is that you've got it so locked down as far as security that what you're going to do is that when the enemy's coming over the hill, the only thing that computer's good for is to pick up and throw at the enemy, because you can't, it's so locked down that it is so secure that it impedes your operations rather than supports it. What Bob said was a manager's role is to find that point in the middle where they can accept the risk that they're taking, yet still meet their mission. Make smart decisions on what security is applied. In business, it's a profit that drives it. But they look at security as a loss. This is something that's going to cost me money. At the end of this presentation, I think I can turn some of that around. Security doesn't cost, but it can also save. And it's not just through losses through attacks. Demand, a lot of demand for operations. So this is what you have to overcome when you're doing security. The nice part about security is, in fact, there's a lot of solutions out there. And as it says in my write-up, that's the good news. The bad news is there's a lot of solutions out there. Which one do I pick? Which one supports my operations? Here's the approach I usually take. Like I said, I use this in the military, and I use this when I do a commercial site. First thing I ask is, what is your business? I want to understand their business. I want to know what they do. Are they a bank? Do they transfer money? Do they save money for people? Are they stock transactions? Do they sell tennis shoes on the internet? What is your business? How do you operate? What type of information do you have to pass around? Well, how do you sell? Who do you sell to? Who's your clients? Who does what? What's the responsibilities of individuals? Who has controls over the systems? Who makes the decisions in the company? Also, what information has to flow? If I'm selling over the internet tennis shoes, I have to get that information out to the customer. The customer makes a decision, now they order. That's what I want to understand. How do they pay for it? Do they bill later, or do they do it online? I need to understand that. The next thing is how do you measure success? Well, do you make money? Do you gain a reputation? What is your need here? My security solutions on this are totally different whenever I'm working with this. Also, I have to know who the users are. When I know who the users are, I know their capabilities and what they'll put up with. What is their culture that they live with? I can tell you from experience that if I'm working with a researcher and I'm working with a banker, I got two different cultures working there. I have to approach each one differently, and the solution I pick for each one has to be different. And then finally, I'll ask them about their architecture. What's your system look like now? Now, you'll notice up there's not one word on security. The reason I do this, as soon as you start talking security, I was at NSA. If I went in and told them I was from NSA, they'd start to clam up right away because they would think I'm going to jail. I'm going to say the wrong thing. Security's something that's uncomfortable with people. So by talking about all this, and let me tell you, they love to talk about their architecture, they love to talk about their business, they love to talk about all this stuff. In fact, they're going to tell you more than they want to tell you. But once you have all this information, the requirements fall right out. If you can do your analysis on it, it falls right out. You don't have to ask security questions. In fact, if you ask them security questions, more than likely you're going to get the wrong answer because they're guessing, or they think they know what it is. Go through this, you'll be able to figure out their security requirements. Now let's go back to our system. let's talk about what are the security requirements of this system. This is an actual case study. At the end of the presentation, I'll tell you what it actually is. It says security requirements, it's really business requirements. When I looked at this one system, I found they had 40 systems. The manager of the operation was worried about the security of all 40 systems. After talking about all those questions, what I found out, in fact, was that he didn't have one system. He actually had functions in that system that had different security requirements. First one, he had a promotional website where he told everybody where he was and what his company did and why they wanted to buy from him. The next one was a transaction site. This is where they did their monetary transactions, their selling, their manipulation of data, their customer databases. And then the last one was a service group in the company. Now this could be a lot of different things. This may be the accounting, it may be a support staff, it may be the actual programmers that work with the system and build the software for the transaction system and the website, depending on what the company is, and you'll only understand that if you talk about their business. Next thing that you do is you look at what are the requirements of each one. Well, the requirement of the website was not confidentiality, but it was integrity. They wanted to make sure it was accurate. No graffiti attacks. In a couple of the companies, we've all heard of the attacks where they embarrass the company by changing what's on there. Yes, that is one attack. There's another attack that a lot of people forget. When Dole and Clinton were up and they did their last, or their first debate, Dole got off the stage, but before he did, he said, "Excuse me, I'm a very modern individual, check my website, I have a website." Well, Swedish hacker went in and checked his website. And what he did is, he didn't graffiti attack the front of the site. You saw exactly what you were supposed to see. But when you clicked on any button, you went to Clinton's website. Now for a business, you work hard to get people to come to your website. What worse thing could you have happen but shoot over to a competitor? So integrity of the site was very important. The transaction site had the biggest problem. You had not only integrity, but availability was the biggest one. The case study I'll explain to you actually would lose $10,000 to $50,000 an hour when that transaction site was down. Additionally, they had 200 competitors on the internet. That meant that if somebody was not happy with that site, they'd go to another one. Confidentiality, you had confidentiality between the people that were actually, the clients that were using it. You also had confidentiality from the vendors or the partners down there that were using this site as a third-party vendor. So you had two sets of confidentiality, so you had to maintain that. We talked about integrity. You don't want people going in and changing quantities or changing what their accounts are. And I already mentioned availability. The clients, on the other hand, down here, they wanted availability, and I already talked about that. They also wanted it to be something that they didn't have to learn a new thing. So it had to be acceptable to a browser. So whatever they built out there, their solution had to work with a browser. And then finally, users are extremely impatient. You make them jump through a lot of hurdles as far as security, they're going to go to one of the other 200 vendors. So they're very impatient. So now I understand the cultures that are out there and the personalities. Partners were looking for confidentiality. They did not want their data shared with everybody on the internet. And they also wanted visibility. Some of these partners want to watch every transaction as it happens in that transaction site. That puts a lot of bandwidth on this, so they needed availability also. Now in the services, that totally is dependent on what that service is. In this case, there was some confidentiality, some integrity, not as high as productivity. These individuals actually had access to the internet, and the manager was afraid that they were going to go out and look at everything on the internet when they really only had the need to go after certain things on the internet. I took a look. I've looked at systems for over 10 years. And after the last 3 years, I took a look at all the systems we did, who we went in with. And I looked and I figured out that about 82% of the systems that we went in, they already had all the security mechanisms they needed. They were just in the wrong place. or they were configured wrong. So what we found is when we did the consulting and went in to look at it, we actually were just redesigning their system and making it fit what their real needs were. A lot of them had bought firewalls. I can tell you about a group that bought 52 firewalls recently. And I asked, what was your policy? How are you going to configure it? They had no clue. They thought, if I buy a firewall, that's all I need to do. 52 of them. And they were supported by 3 of the major contractors in the field, the Department of Defense. And nobody had a clue what a policy was or that you had to configure a firewall. They thought it was like the front door of your house. Okay? Any questions on that? Every one of those are business requirements. Attitudes and perceptions. First one you get is what I call the sailor on liberty. When they hit the beach, I was a military Navy officer. When a sailor hits a beach, he wants anything he can get, and he wants it 3 ways: fast, free, and friendly. They want to make sure the security doesn't cost them anything. They want to make sure it doesn't get in the way, and they want to make, and that's part of friendly, and they want everything to go fast. Now I'll give you an exception to that at the bottom of this slide. Security only costs money. That's their attitude. But in fact, if you look at VPNs nowadays, especially with IP encryption, you're going to find out that it'll actually save you money. And I'll show you an example at the end. The most secure solution is the one with the best GUI. Is that true? Absolutely. That's how Checkpoint got out there. Checkpoint, they visited TIS when I first got there. Absolutely had the best GUI in the world. Most of the people that were working our system, they believe that we're Unix programmers. It'll be a Unix programmer put it in, and they're going to want to see that Unix ugliness. And guess who's got the highest market in the world? I can't tell you how many people have bought Checkpoint because it has the largest market share. Well, is it the best firewall? It doesn't matter. It has the largest market share, so the eyes have it. Relationship and trust. This is probably where a lot of folks actually, you do make it. But that's a long sell because you have to gain their trust. Transparent to the users. Yes, absolutely. It's what I believed in the military. Military guy has one thing on his mind: not getting killed. They do not want to see crypto involved. NSA did a very good job on a lot of their stuff, and it worked. But then I went into the commercial sector and found out that in some cases, especially when it's my money that I'm sending over the internet, it's my credit card going over the internet, I want to use a password. I want to see some security. So the idea of it's got to be totally transparent, no. In the minds of some users, they want to see security. Go back to the business case again. What is the operation? Who are the clients? You give them the wrong solution, they're going to go to a competitor. More attitudes. Sailor-proof. First thing I learned when I went to a destroyer in the Navy, it can make it shock-proof, electric-proof, magnetic-proof, waterproof, you name it, but you'll never make it sailor-proof. If there's a way to break it, they're going to break it. So make it simple and make it usable and make sure they understand what the system is, or they're going to find a way around it. KISS principle. What's KISS stand for? Not done. It stands for keep individual security stupid. What I'm saying is a lot of people don't want to educate their users out there as to why they're doing the security. They just say keep a password, 20 words, 20 characters long, don't put it on a thing. They don't tell them why. You bring in somebody, you educate them as to why, and they'll gain ownership on the solution, and they'll know why. And they won't try to go around it, or they won't figure out another way that you didn't tell them. Make the user smart. You're right. In the government, KISS is the other. The next one is SMTP. What's that stand for?
What you said or what's up there?
What it stands for is security is not my problem. A lot of folks, they get out there and they say, that's not my problem. I think that's the physical security guy's problem. No, that's the manager's problem. A lot of avoidance out there. Just like wearing seatbelts or any other type of protection. They just don't, it's not going to happen to us. And we used to at NSA look for a smoking gun, especially in the budget. What we did do, what I find in the commercial sector is you got to have somebody that's actually been shot before they'll get a lot of security. It's good to have the hype, it's good to work it, but usually they come into you at the last minute, and that's when they start buying the wrong solutions. There's no aspirin for security. Whatever office you call at NSA or you call whatever vendor and say, I need security, they're going to shoehorn whatever solution they have. That's typical. There's no aspirin. It isn't PKI. That's what everybody's touting right now. PKI, everybody in the company ought to have a public key. Public key. Everybody should be able to sign something. Take a look around. There's probably only about 5% of the people in a corporation need to do any signature work. So really kind of scope it down. You're going to be putting out an awful lot of stuff, or a lot of people are putting out a lot of stuff, and they don't even have anything. Only one person in the company can sign off anything normally. So take a look at what the real requirement is. Technology doesn't solve all the problems. I'll show you that in some case studies. Authentication, what's best? We got passwords out there. Everybody says passwords are bad. No, in some cases, when you're just doing your terminal, it's not bad. If you're covering all your links with crypto, it's not bad. If it's what the user will accept, it's not bad. Is it time-based? Everybody knows secure, Secure ID? That's a time base. It changes every 60 seconds. That's not bad because it is a dynamic password, and over the internet it's better than a static one. Challenge and response, a little more work because it's sending you something, you enter something into a calculator, you send it back. Or it's software driven, or it runs off of a floppy disk. That's a possible solution. Or actually smart cards will do that also nowadays. Event-based. This is where I have a token, push a button, I get a new password. Push the button again, I get another new password. Where is that better than the secure ID? Well, if I'm doing a stock transaction every 30 seconds, that doesn't do me any good. What I need is an event-based. So I push the button, do a stock transaction, push the button, put in the 6 digits, now it's signed by me. They know I did it. That actually was deployed at some of the stock firms down in New York City. They deployed over 50,000 tokens to take care of that. The challenge and response was too much work for them. There was too many steps to it. They couldn't afford that. Their business said the guy needed to get on and sell some more stock, so that's what they did. They used a simpler mechanism. Biometrics. Is biometrics any good? No. Maybe. No, because it's expensive. For an individual at a terminal, it may be $500 for a thumb scanner, a retinal scanner, or an iris scanner. But in fact, in prisons, when you're releasing a prisoner, a thumb scanner is excellent. How many people here know that, in fact, prisoners will pay other prisoners to let them get released on their time? They do. That's worth about $5,000 to let me go when it's your time. Well, by doing a thumb scan, I avoid that problem. Well, thumb scanner's $500, but I only need one for a prison. That's not bad. How about ATM machines? They're now doing iris scans, correct? Iris scans. They're expensive, $2,000. But if I'm serving 10,000 people in an area, that's not bad because it's making it user-friendly and the individual doesn't have to use a PIN number. So it's making it user-friendly. Will my audience accept it? Yes. That's making it easier for the individual. I have a camera on them anyway, so I might as well just use it. Public key, again, who needs to use the public key cryptography? Is this something that the banks are putting out? Who do I put that out to? VPN, is that a way of authenticating? Well, let's say, yeah, it is a way of authenticating. If I put a packet encryptor from when I worked with Trusted Information System, we had 2 West Coast offices. We were over the internet. We wanted to protect our information. Well, the fact is that by having the VPNs there that interface those 3 sites, I had assurance that the individual that was coming into the network was in fact a TIS employee. And that's as low as I wanted to get. So yes, VPNs could be used for authentication, but it's more of a group. IDS, Intrusion Detection System. Why did I throw that up there? Well, all the rest of these things, some of them were never thought of as an authentication mechanism. Why not IDS? And that I leave up for the creative individuals. Why not that? Or something else that else is coming down the pike. What was that? Okay, I just went over all those authentications. Here's a case study. Individual came up to me at a conference and he said, Jim, I run on the network. I provide odds to people. What I mean by odds is the odds projections for basketball, football, baseball, any sports that's out there. I have a subscription. So on Friday, they call me up, they come to my website, they use a password. I charge them $25 a month subscription. They use a password, and what they do is they download what I project the odds will be. This is Big Dog Sports. Louis Gupta is the one that runs this out of his house in Philadelphia. And he just heard my presentation on what authentication was all about. He distributed this via the website. What he found out is that some people were actually taking their name, their password on a $25 a month subscription, and they were putting it on a chalkboard at the local bar. Everybody was using it. So he is hitting majors. He was getting 300 hits a month from one individual. So he came to me and he said, Jim, which of these authentication mechanisms should I use? I'm losing 40 grand a month here. Which one should he use? I'm asking you. Anybody? Intrusion detection? All I know is that it was one individual because of they weren't hacking into the system.
You can disconnect the ID when it gets more than 2 in a period of time.
Yeah, but what if, in fact, he had the problem with, what's my number? Oh, 2 at a time? Yes, absolutely, you could do that. Challenge response would have required him to send out a token and install. Tokens are about $25 a piece. He would have had to manage those tokens, and he would have had to send them out. Also, the user would have to wait until he received that token. People don't wait. And also, $25, the first payment, I would have been breaking even. Any other thoughts? Say again. Louder. Make it event-based. I might still have a token there, but that might be possible. Anybody else? Some people said IP addresses. Well, in fact, some people did this from work or they did it from home, so that didn't help. What he actually did, we recommended to him, because we had to sell it to the client also, because he already had an installed base. We left it as password. But what we did is we charged them, instead of a subscription fee, we charged them per hit every time they logged on. And our business case to the clients was we were saving them money. We said most people only check it 4 times a month, every Friday. And therefore, we're only going to charge you $4 every time you connect. And that's how we solved it. The individual that was sending it out and giving it to people would get a bill for 4 times 300. And that solved the problem. That didn't get passed out very much. And Lewis was very good about going out and taking he had a good lawyer friend, and he would take on deadbeats. So that's how he solved it. It wasn't any of the technical solutions. It was actually this, he just changed the subscription rate. Here's some business math that I learned when I was working. I was presenting public key cryptography about 5 years ago to a big bank in New York City. I was briefing one of their executive staff meetings where they were talking about fraud and abuse in their system. I just talked about public key cryptography, and then they started going into their normal business. What they did is before this they had a problem, and that's the before. In the credit cards that they were issuing and controlled, they were making $50 billion a year. That was their take. They found that their losses due to fraud was $4.5 billion. Their net was $46.5 billion. It was at that time that they found out that credit cards were being appropriated a lot through the post office and through mailboxes. What the people were doing is actually these were activated before, as soon as they went out of the bank and into the mail, they were activated. So what they did is, to solve that problem, they basically went out and said, we'd like to have the customer call us, and then we'll activate it after we ask them a key bit of information. I don't know if you know it or not, but when you get what's it called? An application for a credit card in the mail, that's tracked from the day that it leaves. That application better be returned by you. If your neighbor returns your credit card application, it'll be stricken, because they won't accept it. And so that's a check and balance they use. So what they did is they set up this system so they activated it from your phone call. That dropped their fraud $3.5 billion. Just that simple act. Because they did it over an 800 number and it only took you 30 seconds to do it, that was acceptable, and that saved them money. So now they're up to this. Well, being a wise individual and very security-oriented, that other $1 billion that was laying out there, I thought that was important. So I said, you know what, maybe what you should do is actually use maybe public key cryptography or something, or maybe put a picture on their credit card. They've been doing that probably for 3 years now. How many people in here have a picture on their credit card? Right, that's about how well it went over. So I threw these ideas out to them, and they said, Jim, that's great. You know, let's just take a case here. Let's take your better idea, and we're going to make our customers do something that they normally wouldn't do. Take a picture or go somewhere to go get a public key. Something our competitors aren't making them do. Let's say we save the whole $1 billion. We're going to give you that, Jim. We're going to give you that. But now we've made it so uncomfortable for our customers that we've just dropped our revenue coming in $10 billion, because that's about how many people are going to go to a competitor. And with that, geez, Jim, let's do the math. You saved us $1 billion and you lost us $10 billion. Don't think we're going to implement that. Well, that gave me a whole different look at this. It wasn't just a savings, it's what people accept. You'll also notice it got up above $4 billion before they cared to make a change. Everything, even banks, accept a loss. And that's why there is what you have and what you are is in every credit card. ATMs use what you have and what you know. But there's also the possibility that somebody's going to cheat on it and there'll be fraud. Acceptable loss. And every business works with an acceptable loss. Let's go back to the system I started with. What this system did is, when we reviewed it, we looked at it, and the top had a different policy. First of all, the website. In the website, what we did is we just set it up so it was good configuration management, and we made it so nobody could log in over the net, and that cleaned up that. The next thing was we wanted to do the transaction site. So our recommendation was they put 2 different firewalls in because of policy. The reason we did that was because we could get a cheaper firewall, and there's only a few out there that'll actually do 2 ports or 2 or more ports. The reason we put 2 in there is because, remember, the availability problem. If that network on top went out, we lost $10,000 to $50,000 an hour. I was recommending that they had a backup firewall to support that. If the network down below went out from the internet, they didn't care. The only thing they lost there is a little bit of downtime with some programmers. They opted to go with 1 firewall with multi-ports. Actually, they picked Sidewinder. That's Secure Computing, the one that's actually supporting the conference. And the reason they did that, they also had a backup. Sidewinder runs, or actually all firewalls run on a computer. They had a duplicate computer down in their programming shop. So if they ever had a problem, software runs. I don't have to have backup software. So they just moved up that system, reloaded the software, and they're back up and running. That's how they used their backup. That's how they decided to save money there. To take care of the requirements for visibility and confidentiality from the firms, they actually put in 2 IP encryptors, and they encrypted everything going over the internet. This operation was actually done on an island down in the Caribbean. They were actually working with the land-based and an island. What they had was leased lines. They were paying $30,000 a month to lease those lines. We put them on the internet for $6,000, and the IP encryptors cost $5 grand a piece. So figure out, you can figure out the net savings. The IP encryption was a sunk cost one time, but the internet saved them. We saved them about $24,000. I had to do that math. $24,000 a month just by putting in security. So security done the right way can actually save you money. Why did we not go through the firewall? Remember, availability to the end user that was using that firewall was a high requirement. We didn't want to impact the bandwidth going through the firewall with the end user. The end user, what we did there, to make the end user comfortable, what we did is we set up a SSL encrypted VPN between the server inside the operation and their browser. That was used only for passing their password. When I mentioned that it was down in the Caribbean, that meant that they couldn't use strong cryptography. We reduced the size of the data that was actually being passed, therefore bulk encryption attacks. They had very limited data to play with, and it was only done for passing their password to authenticate themselves to the system. As soon as that was finished, we shifted over to high-grade cryptography. And the reason and that was a part of the program they downloaded. They were a sovereign nation. It was St. Kitts down in the Caribbean. They actually got their high-grade crypto from Australia and Ireland. So we didn't have to worry about U.S. export laws. The U.S. export laws do not have any restrictions on exporting cryptography into the United States, so there was no laws broken. The other thing is when I worked at NSA, we had a saying, "In God we trust. Everyone else we monitor." You got a lot of intrusion detection systems out there. What we did is to watch for individuals is we actually put an intrusion detection system on the firewall. There was actually one that came with it that we were using. And we set up alarms there for people that were trying to break into the system. That's the only place we put an intrusion detection system. The next thing is down. Oh, let me ask you this. What business do you think this is? What kind of business? Financial?
Porn site.
Pardon? A porn site, he said.
Business to consumer.
Business to consumer. I'll tell you what it was. It was an an internet gambling casino. It was one of the first ones to come online. It was actually an operation that was set up in a shopping center. It took a storefront, they closed off the doors, the windows, secured all the windows, which at St. Kitts, all of them are secured anyway. And what they did is they were running out of a shopping center. And when we walked in and thinking, as we flew down there, that we were going to walk into this wonderful casinos with cocktails, waitresses serving drinks, and people pulling one-armed bandits, we found we were in a picture your mom and pop little store in a shopping center, and that's exactly what it was. That's where we were working with. Now that brought a lot of things to us. When we first talked to the manager, he said, every night I go to bed and I worry about the 40 computers and the security for it, because I am hooked up to the internet. After talking to him about his business, we explained to him the next day that all he had to do is worry about the 5 systems that were on the top of this slide. And he said, you're absolutely right. I missed that because I watched this grow up from one computer in a garage, and I missed the fact because I was burdened with all the history. And that's where somebody coming in for a first look really helped. His other problems that he had was that he had programmers and graphic artists down on this other site. He had about 34 of them. He also had contractors down there. Originally, anybody could change anything on the transaction system. By reconfiguring the system and putting in the firewall, and we put a we moved all those 5 systems into a room that only 3 people in the company could get access to. The question came, who were those 3 people going to be? Fortunately, everybody was actually a technical person. Well, we decided that it was a small island of 15,000 people. Everybody knew everybody in the company and where they lived. They went to school with them. But we needed to hone that down to people we could really trust. So the 3 people that were allowed in that room were the 3 people in that company that had stock in that company, had an interest in making sure that it was good. So that's what we decided, that's how we took care of the personal problem. Oh, I'm sorry. We put a web filter in there. Actually, Sidewinder came with one. And what we did is the graphics artists, they wanted them to look at everything on the internet. Porno sites, you name it. Who cares? We want you to get the best that's out there and play, steal whatever was out there or somebody else was doing, because we wanted to be the best. So they wanted them to see everything. The programmers, they didn't want them to see everything. They just wanted them to see the software sites. So they put a web filter in there that was terminal based, so they could to separate out who actually could see things. And that worked well. We still had a problem with backups. I asked him about backups, and he said, Jim, I got backups. Father, son, grandfather, day 1, day 2, day 3. I said, where are they? He said, well, they're right there on the shelf. I said, Tim, why don't you have those somewhere else? And he said, well, I had an insurance company come in here and give me the answer that I had to buy a $4,000 guaranteed for 8 hours at 4,000 degrees safe to put them in. I asked him, Tim, where's your house? And he said, well, it's on the other side of the island. I said, what's the possibility of this building and your house burning down? He said, well, the volcano on the island, Mount Serrat was going off at that time. And I said, let's both agree you got bigger problems if that volcano's going off. And he said, yep, you're right. So what we did is I told him, I said, I'm going to buy you that $4,000 safe. Went next door to the grocery store that was next door, bought him 3 6-pack coolers, and that's what he used for his safe. He took those coolers home, day 1, day 2, day 3. Every morning he'd bring the oldest one home, give it to his systems administrator. He'd pick it up at the door as he was going out that night, and he'd have his backup. And that's how he got his $4,000 safe. So backups, off-site, simple, not the standard solution from an insurance company. The next thing is we had a little problem while we were there. The power went off. Little islands like that tend to have a little bit of a problem with power. So I asked him, Tim, how long does the power go out around here? Oh, about twice a week. How long does it go out? Well, the problem is it goes out for an hour to 2 hours at a crack. I said, well, that's good. I just looked at your up systems. They're good for 15 minutes. And at the transaction site, that's the only one we had to worry about, because that's where the money was being spent. That's where we'd lose the $10,000 to $50,000 an hour. So what I said was, Tim, let's go out for a cup of coffee. I used to be the chief engineer on a destroyer. I know what engines sound like. We walked outside. I heard a diesel generator pumping away, and we had already talked about the fact that he was going to have to get some type of backup power. I said, I got a better idea, Tim. Let's take the manager of the grocery store out for coffee. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask him how much it's going to cost for you to get an emergency feed off of his diesel generator. Why would a guy in a grocery store have an emergency generator? Freezer units. You don't want to have your ice cream, somebody said, or your meat thawing on you and going bad. Absolutely. So that's exactly what we did. For $50 a month, that's what he got. And it worked out fine. So in summary, basically when you're going to do security, base it on business first. Because you could put in the best piece of security that's out there, and your clients don't accept it, they're going to walk on you. Use practical solutions. A lot of times people will call, they'll say, you know, we look at things from a holistic way, and absolutely. You notice some of the solutions that I had here were not technical, they were they were people, they were policy, they were procedures. But all of it was based back to the business. The other thing about knowing the person's business is now you talk in their language. You can talk about profits and loss, how it affects their business. And when you start talking what they're talking, they feel very comfortable and the trust factor goes up on it. And most of all, security is a risk. You're going to take a risk no matter what you do. Tim knew that actually people would be passing around passwords. They knew that they were going to have acceptable loss. So any contracts they had with the casinos that were in Antigua, they actually had it in there that they were going to be some risk. And the reason is that the casinos wanted full visibility of their of the gamers playing on their casino at these internet virtual casinos is because that's what they're used to. Take a look out here. There's not one table out there that doesn't have a camera or 2 cameras on it. They don't trust anybody. And even in the internet casinos, the casinos wanted to watch all the time what every player was doing. That's it. Is there any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, snacks, your cookies, fruit, sodas, coffee, whatever, on the side aisle over here. Enjoy it. We'll start back up in about 15 minutes. If you have questions for Jim, feel free to come up and talk.